Hello there, my name is Corey Durbin, CEO of Shared Health Alliance, and I'd like to welcome you to Running Eyes, a podcast where we take a meaningful, deep dive into the relationships, strategies, and global mission of ASH to change healthcare and change lives. Well, I am joined this Friday afternoon by my good friends, Chris and Elaine Whitney. Chris and Elaine are the founders of One Gen Away in Franklin, Tennessee. We have known each other, we're probably too long to admit now, we care to admit. And they're just such great friends of our family. Chris is a board member at Alliance for Shared Health. He and Elaine have had such a great impact in my life personally and in the lives of our family. And it's so nice of you guys to be with us. I'm looking forward to our conversation today. How are you both?
Doing great.
Man, we're doing well. It's an honor to be here with you. And man, we could fill up quite a few of these, I'm sure, with some stories over the years.
So true.
Well, we want people to still kind of like me at the end of this, so maybe we could, refrain from a few of them. So you guys are you're in Franklin, but Nashville just kind of got pounded like a lot of the country. You guys survived all the storms and the craziness of this past week.
Yeah, it's we're looking forward to this white stuff to go away. It's not conducive to functioning down here. You know, we don't have the plows and things that other people have, so it's
pretty much all the stores have shut down.
Yeah, it's hard to get much done down here right now. So we're looking forward to some warm weather coming in tomorrow. It'll be 60 by Tuesday, so we're looking forward to Tuesday.
Well, I don't want to dwell too much on this, but it's sure. Hoping you have all the supplies you need, and I've talked to some other friends there that said they didn't have coffee in their house for 3 days, and they were growing a little bit hard to be around.
Yeah, I can imagine. Fortunately, we could get out. My truck was able to get out pretty well, and running a food ministry, man, we've got access to a lot of food. So we've been to the warehouse a few times, and we conducted a little business this week, but it was definitely not normal. That's for sure.
Well, and I haven't got to catch up with you on, Elaine had flown home. She was out visiting my wife with a couple other friends, and they got to spend a couple days, I think, on the Oregon coast. But your trip home was probably pretty eventful, huh, Elaine? And you just beat the storm in, I guess.
It was.
Or the second wave of it, maybe.
Yeah, we had 3 canceled flights, and but I spent the night in Denver, but got home Wednesday morning, and my husband was very happy about that. So,
yes, it was.
But we had a great time.
Good. Well, I appreciate it. I know it's late in the day on a Friday for you also. Where to start? I mean, you and I have known each other, Chris, probably 25 years now.
Man,
something like that.
I was talking about you this morning, and I was trying to figure that out too. I think it's been close to 25 years.
I believe, yeah.
We were both a lot younger.
Well, yeah, I mean, that goes without saying for sure.
I know.
Knew you from our days in St. Louis, had met you through St. Louis Family Church, and you were in the insurance business at the time, and had started, I had left a job that I had working for an insurance company and started on my own. And you were nice enough to help me get my start and work in some of your office space there. And it was such a huge encouragement to us as we ventured out into the unknown of being entrepreneurs. I don't know if you have anything to say about that time, but just wow, it was remarkable for us that door opened and you were there for us at that time.
Well, I mean, it was, I think it's the same thing you would do for me, man. This is what friendships are for and what they're about. And I always love your heart for entrepreneurship. I loved your heart for people, your heart for giving. And to me, it's a no-brainer. It's just that old thing. If you've got something that you can give to somebody, go ahead and give it to them, let them use it. And, we've known each other for a long time, and I've seen you do that for so many people. And it's such a great example for us. And we're thankful to have played a small part early on and into all the lives you've impacted over the years. And, now it's fun now, I guess, isn't it? We get to look back over the years. And, I've been talking a lot about lately. In church, you've heard people talk about when you see a tapestry and how beautiful a tapestry is, but when you look at the backside of a tapestry, it's kind of a hot mess, with just a bunch of strings hanging everywhere. But we're getting old enough now where we get to kind of see both sides of the tapestry, don't we? We get to see a little bit of the finished product, and we get to see the hot mess. And
Right.
And I know it motivates you as it does me to create more hot mess because of what's on the other side, you know?
Well, I know I've said this before with some other guests and said, if you knew everything it was going to take to get to where you were trying to go, most of us wouldn't take that first couple steps. And you also realize once you get there, just how rewarding it is to actually navigate through all of life's challenges. And it's so much better when you have relationships and friendships like we have. And I know, you all were, I want to use the proper term, but you were the youth leaders or youth pastors at a church in St. Louis for a long time. And your journey had a lot of ebbs and flows to get to where you got. But how long were you youth leaders at that church?
It was 13 years.
Yeah, 13 years. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you really helped lead a lot of kids in directions in their faith that they probably would have never even considered going. And I mean, some of the trips, youth mission trips you guys have been on, I don't know if anything sticks out that you'd love, that you would be willing to share at the moment, but there are so many stories you've shared with me through the years, and not one thing is sticking out in particular, but I don't know, it jumps off the page or jumps into your mind as I ask that.
Yeah. Well, I remember one of the kids was probably maybe 17, 18 at the time. And the first ocean he ever saw, we're standing on the Irish Sea and, looking at the Irish Sea over in Ireland, on the coast of England, getting ready to go over to Ireland, and I thought, how crazy is that this kid finally saw the ocean and it's over here, and I mean, there's so many other great stories about the impact that these young people had on the areas we went to
and on our lives.
Yeah. And I think one of the greatest things that I came back with, Corey, was that, when you see people until they talk, you wouldn't know where they were from, for the most part. I mean, you wouldn't know if they were from America, Germany, France. You just can't tell, until they'd speak and you'd hear their language. And that was always something that's very sobering to me, that, you want to learn not to judge something too quickly when you know what I mean? And because you just don't know.
That's true.
Anything for you, Elaine? Is there a trip or a moment from your youth mission trips that sticks out for you?
No, I was just so grateful to see so many countries, and so really blessed to be able to do that and to travel. I mean, we went all over to France and the Isle of Man and London. And I mean, it was just incredible. So just to see that part of the country and be able to share that with 50 teenagers every trip, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And just, those times I'll just never forget.
Right. Well, so how old were you two when you started youth pastoring?
Oh gosh.
Golly, man, now you're really
Thanks, Corey.
Yeah, really, man. Now we're going to.
Well, I'm not asking to tell you what year you started, so
Let me see.
I mean, you were young. You guys were young.
Yeah, we were.
So maybe the better question is
probably 20.
How old were your kids?
30 years ago.
Our oldest is 32 right now, and I think she was probably like 5.
Yeah, well, no, when I went to St. Charles.
Oh, she was
a newborn.
She was a newborn when we were in.
Yeah,
when we started in the youth ministry. You're right. Yeah. So it's been like 31 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. So eventually, and I forget the story of when you guys, who led you guys to the Lord, but I also just know as a board member of ASH, of the Health Share program, that you all know how important healthcare is. You've been through some major challenges in your life. And I was kind of trying to tie the story of, think about when you started and when your daughter Sarah was born and all the things that surrounded it with that. And if that was really pre youth pastoring, and maybe that, maybe we can get into that story a little bit.
Yeah, actually it was, we had literally just started. No, we started youth pastoring at a little church in St. Charles. Mm-hmm. We were back in the day at Grace World Outreach, where we got saved and gave our hearts to Christ through a guy I met when I was in the construction business. And Elaine and I left that church to start a youth group at a little church in St. Charles. And it was quite a moment. There was a we were on this 3-year plan to be licensed and ordained, and lo and behold, something just happened strange in the church where we had to leave, and we were actually pregnant with Sarah at that time. And so here we are. We walked away from a vision and dream we had 1 year in because we just knew we had to. It was just became a weird just an uncomfortable situation. And we started going to the church we were at that we youth pastored for so long. And it's just, and that's where the journey began, when...
Well, we had just found out at that time that I was pregnant, and just found out that the baby, we didn't know boy or girl at that point, but that the baby was diagnosed with spina bifida. So then we had to leave that church and went to another church, and it was just, your whole world is turned upside down when that happens. Yeah,
I never forget going to they had a thing back then. It's still around, called the alpha theta protein test, but it was very new at that time. And, our doctor said, hey, you tested positive, and,
which if it was elevated,
it's spina bifida.
Spina bifida. If it was lower, it could have been a possibility of Down syndrome. Yeah, but ours was elevated.
And so we did this test, and he said it was elevated, but he goes, there's a lot of false positives. So we just didn't think anything of it, to be honest with you. We just kind of lived life and didn't think anything of it, and we went and
we thought they were just false positive. Yeah. We went to a genetic specialist, and they checked all of our history, and we went through this whole, line of all of our history between both of our families, and none of us had it in our history or anything of our family. So they were like, oh, it's probably just false positive, but just go ahead and get this ultrasound. So we did. And I don't know if you want to tell that story.
Go ahead and tell that story.
We were, we went down to get the ultrasound, and it was through a doctor who had written a lot of ultrasound books. And so they started, the nurse practitioner lady started doing the ultrasound. All of a sudden, there were more students that came in and doctors that came in, and Chris and I are looking at each other like something is going on. And so then the doctor comes in, and then all of a sudden he puts the paddle down, and he goes, well, we've got a problem. He said, your child has spina bifida. It's one of the largest I've ever seen. It's a 5 vertebra opening. And he showed us on the ultrasound of where her vertebra is. So when spina bifida, I don't know if you know what that is, but what happens is all your cells come together to form the spine. And for some reason it's stopped. And then there's a sac that's on the back that has all of the vertebrae that were supposed to be in line, they were like 5 vertebrae. And he showed them to us, and he said, your child has spina bifida. He said, the child will always be in a wheelchair, never have control of its bowels. And we're just like floored because we're thinking it was a false positive. So we're just like crying, and it was just horrific. And so anyway, they wanted me to go get a amniocentesis done, because they didn't even think that, they thought the defect was so large that the baby wouldn't even be compatible outside of the womb, life compatible. They thought that she might not even make it. And so anyway, you can take from there, Chris. We just stood and believed God.
Our OB in St. Louis, Kent Branson, I called him, and he said, we really need to, figure out if this baby's life compatible. So you need to, talk Elaine into, getting the amniocentesis done. And
we were just in shock.
And we were just floored. I mean, we just literally
talk about a tough day.
Oh man, it was really, and Lauren, we've got Lauren at a,
she wasn't quite 2 years old.
Wasn't quite 2 years old yet, and so we got to go pick her up and then go home and call our parents. And
that was horrific.
Yeah, that was.
I remember the screams over the phone and all that.
And so that was, there was like literally, as a parent too, Corey, we were there when Talia Shea was born, and and I mean it's. As you've seen some pretty crazy, amazing things, too. And, there was nothing we could do. There's just nothing. And there's no worse feeling as a parent with your child than there's nothing you can do. You know what I mean? There's just nothing like that. And
thank God we learned faith early on.
Yeah. So we literally, I mean, you know me that I barely speak real English, so you understand when I say it this way. But
not true, but
yeah. But I just looked at Elaine and I said, there are no options. You know what I mean? And not because there were no options. We always want to really lean on our faith in God and trusting Him. But I just said, we can either fight for what we know to be true.
You said the exact words were, okay, he said we could belly up and die, or are we going to fight for what we know is true? And I'm like, we're going to fight. And boy, did we, honey.
Yeah. So we just, we decided no more tests until like close to delivery. And because why keep going back and just hearing the same, you know what I mean? Yeah. What's the point?
Well, and the crazy thing was, is, I had one child. So I'm feeling the baby kicking and they're like, oh no, it can't be kicking. The baby's just floating. And, because, it was supposed to be paralyzed from the waist down, And so anyway, that was kind of difficult going through that.
You knew what a kick felt like, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And at that point, I was 4 months pregnant. So I still had, a good 5 more months left to go.
It was, you know what I mean? It was definitely trying on our relationship and everything, we just learned how to encourage each other, love on each other and walk through this thing together. There was no manual like, hey, this is what you do when this happens.
What? I think in times like that, though, things can either bring you closer together or it can really take you far apart. I've known a lot of people who've gotten divorced in situations like that. And thank God that we just, looked at each other and loved each other through it. And, because we were going through the same thing, but yet it was two different things. I had the baby with me, so I could never leave that situation. I felt the baby constantly, and where Chris would go to work, and I'm sure that maybe he broke down at work. I don't know, because he was always the rock to me when he came home, And so, anyway, we just really looked, just went through this together and really just looked to God for the answer, really stood and believed God for healing. And no matter, you had good days and bad days. And when that time I probably had a lot more bad days than good days, but Chris was my rock and he helped me get through it. And so. Yeah,
So if we fast forward a little bit to just, so you've got this information, you're 4 months in and you're like, well, we're going to fight. So what's fight mean from there? And, how did you get, what was the next step and what were the next 5 months like?
Yeah. So the next step for us was, kind of like a simplistic thing, in Romans 10, it says faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word of God. So we just stood on some scriptures, man. And we,
got a book on healing. I was reading that.
She's reading a book on, about, God and healing and so we would just stick scriptures up on the refrigerator, on the mirror in our bathroom. So we just they were always in front of us and we were always, so they were just constantly before our eyes and we were constantly repeating them, just encouraging ourselves, there's a lot to be said when, King David with Ziklag and, about, it says he strengthened himself in the Lord. And we had to strengthen, we were trying to strengthen each other, but you can't strengthen somebody if you don't have any strength. You know what I mean?
I remember reading this book and it was on healing. And I was like, okay, God, I'm just literally talking to God. I'm like, you healed people in the Bible. You're going to heal my baby now. We had so much faith and just really just stood and believed God. And it wasn't that we were denying that was a mountain, but we were saying to that mountain to be removed and cast into the sea. So we knew the spina bifida was there, but we were believing God for miraculous healing on our baby. And it's so cool because people would call us to encourage us. And it ended up that they would say, hey, you guys, we called to encourage you, but you just encouraged us. So we would pour ourselves into that situation and other people's situations and pray for them and their situations because we knew that God was taking care of us at the same time.
Yeah. I think that's a key.
So what was, go ahead, Chris. Yep.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Corey. I'll finish up with,
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering what was the next point where there was some, I don't know what the word is, but, obviously you end up delivering Sarah, but was there something in between that 4 month period?
Oh, yeah,
there was a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the coolest
and I know there's
a
lot to the story.
Yeah.
But.
I came home from work one day and Elaine said, I feel like we're supposed to go see this guy named R.W. Shambach, which was kind of funny because a guy I worked with at the time, one of the guys led me to the Lord. He would listen to him on the job site. I was in drywall business at that time before insurance. And so he was an evangelist, around the country. And so we literally,
I never heard of him.
Yeah, she never heard of him. And I tell people, we didn't send money to him. The guy didn't know. We didn't know him from man to moon. Yeah.
So anyway, I really felt like God was telling me, and to go see R.W. Shambach. And I had never heard of him. Which was really, that's really crazy. But so anyway, I wrote a letter to him and I explained everything about what the doctor said. And I said, in that letter, I said, I'm so sorry. I don't really know you. I've never heard of you. I haven't given you money or anything like that. But I just really felt like God was telling me to come and see you. So anyway, I get ready to go mail the letter and I call their I called the prayer line and they said, "Oh, honey, he gets thousands and thousands of letters a day and they have a prayer team that reads the letters. He won't see it." I said, "That's fine. Just give me the address." And so I just prayed over that letter and I sent it out. And so Chris came home and I told him, I said, I really feel like we're supposed to go see R.W. Shambach. And it was in Chicago, Illinois. He goes, "Okay, let's go." And I'm like, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, let's do it." So anyway, Chris's boss and his wife loved R.W. Shambach. So we went with them to Chicago. And so anyway, we got there a little early and there was like 4 rows that were reserved for pastors because he had pastored in that area before. So we took the next row and then we're sitting there. And before it started, he was walking around up there and Dave DeGear, who was a dear friend of ours who drove us, he said, "Hey, you guys go say hi to him." And I'm like, "Man, I'm not going to go up there." And what did he say, Chris?
He goes, "I just drove you 250 miles. You can walk 50 feet and go say something."
We're like, oh, okay.
Something you would say to me, Corey.
Right.
And I would say to you.
Like
So
me a little
this
bit.
guy, so R.W. Shambach he's huge. He's such a tall guy. And so Chris and I go over there and I stick my hand out and I said, "Hi," I go, "I'm Elaine Whitney." And he grabs my hand and pulls me to him and he said, "You're the one that wrote the letter." And I said, "You got the letter?" And he put his hand on his chest and he said, "Not only do I have it, I brought it." He goes, "You expect great things to happen tonight because God's going to heal your baby." And oh my gosh, Corey, I was just like crying. I couldn't even believe it because first of all, I know this sounds so crazy, but I was like, "Oh my gosh, I heard from God." Like I can hear from God too. And so anyway, Chris and I, we went and sat down. I think we were like floating, I think at the time. But anyway, so he preached this message of when he was an intern basically with A.A. Allen. And he said that he preached a message that of the greatest miracle he had ever seen was this baby getting healed of 26 diseases. And he starts explaining all of them, about this baby was blind and mute. And anyway, so it was an incredible story. So after he preached, he called us up and he goes, "Hey," he goes, "there's a couple here from St. Louis." And he said, "I want you to come up." And he starts explaining everything in the letter about their baby at spina bifida and, all of this stuff. And so anyway, we come up there and I thought this was really interesting. He had all those pastors that were there on the 4 rows. He said, "I want you all to surround them." And he goes, "And I want everybody in the audience to hold hands." He goes, "But first you ask that person if they believe in miracles. Because if not," he goes, "don't hold their hands." He goes, because God is going to perform a miracle tonight." And so he literally laid hands right on my stomach. He prayed over me. He prayed over Chris. And it was really powerful and incredible. So anyway, that to me helped us through those next 5 months.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
Really helped us.
Wow.
That was in September. It was like right in the middle.
Yeah, it was right September. And she was due January 1st, but we ended up having a C-section. But anyway, so we had to go back in the 9th month and get an ultrasound. So we go back to that same doctor and he does the ultrasound and he's just kind of like, "Well, the defect's still there." And I remember being so disappointed that it was there because I was believing God it was gone, And, but he's acting so weird. And he said, "I have no idea." He goes, I can't tell you how much paralysis. And he was just acting really bizarre. And so, anyway, later that night, our OB calls us and he goes, "Hey, did you hear the great news?" And we're like, "What great news? Like, what do you mean?" And he said, so I forgot to say this, but at the very beginning, the baby had water on the brain, so much they call it like a waterhead. It was so much water on the brain that at the beginning, well, then when we had the second ultrasound, the doctor told me, our OB said that that water was almost gone completely. And it freaked the doctor out so much because that's medically impossible. And so he was so dumbfounded that he didn't even know what to say. And so anyway, so we scheduled her C-section and for 2 weeks early. So we had her on December 21st of 1990 and went in for the delivery and had the C-section, and all of a sudden there was, all these doctors in there, neonatal, ready to take her away and everything, And so as soon as we delivered her, they start.
That's not an easy thing to think about as a mom, is it?
It was hard. It was very
Taking your
difficult.
baby away.
That room was packed, though. I mean, I'll never forget that. But no, I was from the waist down. But anyway, so Dr. Branson he goes, "It's a girl." He goes, "And she's kicking her feet and she's moving her legs." And I mean, everybody in there just started crying because everybody knew what they thought, was going to come out to be. And she did have the defect on her back. And so she had to go into surgery the very next day, a long surgery to take the sac off of her back and put all the nerve endings. But what was so cool was, in this ultrasound, when we saw the sac and he pointed out all those vertebrae, that God put every vertebra back in place, and it was just spinal fluid and nerve endings in that sac. So with spina bifida,
she clearly was not paralyzed.
No, for sure. She's 30 years old now and walks and everything. But it was just awesome. She's with spina bifida. Other things happen. Like she had a bunch of different things, like a cleft palate and different stuff. But so she's had 17 surgeries all of her life, and now she's 30 years old and she has her own place and she walks and runs whatever she wants to do. So we're very, very grateful. God has been so faithful and so good to us.
Yeah, a couple of things out of there, Corey, that I think are important for anybody that's listening is that, we had a couple of moments that were really hard, but then we also had a couple of really cool breakthroughs, kind of encouragement, like when Elaine wrote the letter and he said, you wrote the letter. That was such a big moment for her. And when, those breakthroughs are like when we get the call after, we go in and get an ultrasound and the defect's still there and you're believing it's not. But we get a call saying, hey, there's no more hydrocephalus, no more water on the brain. That's medically impossible. God always throws these little nuggets out there when you just most need them, I believe, to keep you encouraged to fight and press through, to the other side.
It's so true.
And I think that's what I just want to encourage anybody that's going through something, that to not give up, to keep pushing through to the other side, because there's something on the other side that you don't know about, and it's not always been peaches and keen, it's like 17 surgeries, man. I mean, we were believing for none. And we're not disappointed.
No,
because it's just the journey. And it didn't always go the way she had another surgery she was supposed to have. And 3 nights before the surgery, Elaine woke up in the middle of the night and God said, you need to get your daughter scanned. You need to get your daughter scanned. And she calls the hospital, St. John's Mercy, it well. And the surgeon that was doing was the chief of surgery at St. John's. And she said,
that was crazy.
Yeah, she said, you want to get a scan? And he said, well, Mrs. Whitney, that's fine if it makes you feel better. And so we did. And the lady that did the scan comes out and she goes, you must not believe anything we say, because your daughter's fine. The top 10%
of her kidneys that weren't functioning since birth or functioning properly should need the surgery.
Yeah, she didn't need this. So we saw a couple miracles in the 17 surgeries. Does that make sense? So it's a journey, man. It was a challenge at times. It has been for, at different times. And there's so many more stories about Sarah that were miraculous, that she was going to have to wear splints all of her life. And she kept being able to walk on her own without splints. And they say that would never happen. And she doesn't wear splints. She hasn't worn splints since she was.
Gosh, since she was what? Three or four. Yeah.
She didn't walk till she was 3. So I mean, it's been a process, but we never ever through the process ever doubted God or blamed God or, that just wasn't part of our deal. It wasn't part of who we were or our DNA. It's just part of,
but the Bible says every good and perfect gift comes from above. So
yeah, and there's going to be challenges in life.
It is. I mean, that's life. Life is challenging, but I think one thing that I remember so much and through so much of our life, because so much happened, you guys, through that whole situation of Sarah when she was born. Not a lot of people know, but Chris, there was no work. It was an ice storm, so he lost his job and we lost everything we had. We went bankrupt, and it's pretty interesting to think about. At that time it was so hard, and I'm sitting in the line for food. And now here we have a food ministry, which is crazy because I think we can tell people for real that it's a season. You're going through things, but it's not going to be like that forever. It's just a season. And I mean, we're a huge testament to that, that it is a season. Everybody goes through seasons, of their life, but.
Yeah. And I think back when we started this, you talked about insurance, and our insurance was basically half my income back then, when we had Sarah
30 years ago.
Right.
And
it was so expensive.
It was so expensive, to have coverage, but you had to have it. You know what I mean? It was like there wasn't any options,
Thank God we had
and,
that.
Well, we have a way of how we think things should go. And right now, just speaking to the whole idea of when we pray and when we're believing God for something, or we feel like we're really standing in faith for something. And we certainly have this way.
but God says, my ways aren't your ways, and
Yes.
the way I do things isn't like the way you would do things. And God chooses the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and on, right? And so there is some very sound wisdom in knowing, just because the answer isn't the way we want the answer to be, doesn't mean God isn't at work and isn't moving. And I know there's a whole lot more to Sarah's story, and we only have so much time, but I really believe it's going to encourage some people out there. And I think at one point you were working on a book. Is that still something you talk about, or something that's come to fruition?
We were working on it. We just haven't really finished it, and we need to. We need to probably pick that back up and finish it.
Yeah, we really do, because it kind of
so much into that story.
Yeah, it's a book written from both of our perspectives, what we were dealing with and how we were dealing with the thing at the same time. Is a hope for couples that are going through something that's really difficult, hard on a marriage. How you can not, it can hopefully help you not to judge the other because of how they're reacting, because they're made differently. We're guys, we're wired differently than women. I mean, I know that's basic simplicity, but I think we forget that in the midst of the battle sometimes.
So
that
true.
They're going to react maybe a little differently than we do. And
I just remember, in those times and some of those days, I mean, all I could do was cry. And when you cry, I just felt like I was not in faith. And that's so not the truth, and then all of a sudden God would give Chris this vision of why he gave us tear ducts. It was to relieve pressure, and then you just get right back and you just believe God and stand, and keep standing. You don't sit down and keep having a pity party, which we could have, but we didn't. We just thought, okay, I just needed to release it with tears. Okay, now I'm good, get back up and stand and believe God. And so there's so many things to that story. And so we do need to write the book.
Yeah.
Well, certainly one of the things that I admire about both of you is your willingness to stand in faith. And, our stories are not, they don't define us. I think how we respond to these challenges in our life certainly does illustrate where is our faith. And that doesn't mean there aren't ebbs and flows to it. And is it 15, 16 years ago where you felt like it was time to leave St. Louis and move 16. To Franklin, Tennessee? And you mentioned the food distribution program. You guys founded an organization called One Gen Away. Let's get into that a little bit as we kind of transition. I hope that book happens, and I hope that there's some listeners that want to hear more of the story, because there's only so much. I think we could do 3 hours on that story, and it might not even be enough time. And it would be fun to do that. It would be impactful, I should say. I don't know how fun it is, but it would really be impactful for listeners to hear that. But so moving to Franklin, and how
we moved 16 years ago.
So 16 years ago, you started a church, I think, initially. Well, I don't know if that's exactly, it's day one. But eventually that transitioned into some, flood relief. And tell us about One Gen Away and how that came to be and what it is.
So we moved here 16 years ago to Franklin, Tennessee, a little over 16 and a half years ago. And we actually had the first vision. And you were one of the very few people that knew we were even thinking about it. I mean, there was, I think, 6 people on planet Earth that even knew. Our kids didn't know. And it's actually started 23 years ago when we had the idea, and then Sarah had to have some other surgeries, a whole other story.
Not only that, we just kept praying and believing God and coming and walking the land here.
And praying.
Our
and
kids
going
didn't
home.
even know. They didn't have a clue at the time.
And so we started the church, and then I was praying one day, and God dropped this phrase in my heart, one generation away. And I had no idea what to do with it. And so I just reserved a domain name. And that's what I did. I reserved a domain name and started to pray about it. And remembered a story about our oldest daughter, Lauren, who was, years before, like 7 years before, been watching a special on Dr. King. And she looked up crying and said, "Dad, why are they spraying the brown people?" And I kind of had this, backwards vision of this thing, of flashback. lost the word there, the flashback. Felt like God said we're a generation away from eliminating racism. I know that's a hot subject in today's world, but I believe our kids don't see color as a barrier. You know, they just see it for what it is. It's just a different color. And so that's where it started. And we started, Elaine went to work outside the home for the first time in like 16 years, I guess, when we came here. And she worked at a place called Mid-Cumberland Community Action Agency. And this guy would deliver bread. Well, he was from a large food bank here in Middle Tennessee. And he said, you know, we could bring a 53-foot trailer full of food to a parking lot. And she goes, well, I'll tell my husband. And I was working with volunteering with another church called La Casa de Mi Padre here in Franklin. And they would do a Cinco de Mayo festival, and they would provide clothing for the poor and food and things like that. So I was on the food committee and told them the idea. We bought our first truck, and that's where it kind of happened, man. We started, a year
agency.
Yeah, a year ago, we became an agency so we could get more food to do Cinco de Mayo through our church. And year goes by and we're in downtown Franklin, and I have a St. Louis cell phone number, as you well know. I still do today because I was still running my insurance business back then. And I got a phone call. I told Elaine, we need to call Second Harvest, get a truckload of food. And my phone rings, and it was them calling me with a free truckload of food. And, you know, as we look back, we're going, wow, you know. Yeah. And then one of the cool things about Mid-Cumberland is they would do commodities 4 times a year. So these government agencies around the country that help the elderly winterize their homes and things like that. They also do food commodities 4 times a year. So we volunteered to do that as a church, and we would sort food and bag it. And then we would walk people out to their cars, because most of them were elderly and on canes, and we would load their cars with the food. And I thought, well, I'm on public property. I can ask them, is there anything I can pray with you about today? So I would do that, not knowing that God was creating a model that we're using today before I even knew the model would exist. You know, it's interesting how God will do that to you. You know, he'll put things in you that you have no idea what for. And then one day it comes to you, go, oh, that's why he did that, you know? And,
right.
So that's what we did, man. We started with that, and
we started rescuing food in our car.
And well, so to keep going with one generation away to eliminating racism, the next thing was we only had 20 people in our church, and you get, 20,000 pounds of food, all different stuff that's got to be bagged. You need some extra help, So
I would say so. Yep.
Yeah. So I called some pastor friends and say, hey, would you think about announcing it to your church? We'd get some volunteers. And so some other churches started volunteering, and I started noticing in our parking lot that there's all these different churches in our parking lot, and we're all just laughing and bagging food and praying for people, and so it's like a generation away from eliminating racism, and then what I call denominationalism, not eliminating denominations, but where we're not being separated by the name on the outside of our church building.
Coming together
and come together and serve.
Yeah.
And then Miss Rena happened. And Miss Rena, I met her doing commodities. She would sign people in. She was an African-American woman I knew. She was really pretty. She was probably 70 years old. Mm-hmm. Just really always dressed to the nines, just always together, really sweet. And she's in our food line one day. And she came up to me and she said, Pastor Chris, thank you for this food. And I said, oh, Miss Rena, you're welcome. And she goes, no, really, thank you. I go, Miss Rena, no, this is just what we do. And she goes, you just don't understand. She goes, now I can buy my medicine. And man, Corey, when she said that, it was the first time I've heard it, probably hundreds of times now, but you could have just pushed me over. I think I'm in the 7th wealthiest county in the United States of America. And here's a woman making a decision between food and medicine. And I was like, wow.
Right.
What is going on? I had no idea this was going on. And
so that was popular.
that's kind of how it all started, man. And we started doing mobile food pantries, and then we got a call from another food ministry here about a Whole Foods wanting somebody to rescue food from them. And he goes, that's just not what we do. And he goes, but I thought you'd do it. We go, yeah, I'd do it. And we took our
Chris never says no.
We took our Hyundai Santa Fe up SUV and started loading food from Whole Foods, and
back of our car.
We drive it into a low income neighborhood and give the food away.
Open up our trunk and just let them shop for free. Yeah.
So that's
give it all away.
That's how it all started, man. And we just started with a vision and a dream. And I kind of.
How many pounds of food did you give away in 2020?
We 5.5 million pounds of food.
About 4.2 million meals in 3 states. And
that's 4.2 million meals. Excuse me.
Yeah,
yes.
4.2 million meals. Yeah, and
how many states did you say?
3 states.
3 states.
Yeah.
3 states.
And, it was because that's when I had the vision, and, you were so instrumental in so much of my life because of you being a visionary. And Elaine and Summer don't allow us in a room together by ourselves too long because we'll probably dream of something that
that's the truth.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Got to
That's
keep
true.
tabs on you guys.
But just that I dreamed of, feeding 1 million people around the country in a day on a Saturday, and 1 million people being prayed with face to face by the local church. And
Because what happens is at the beginning, before COVID, people would walk, they'd stand in line, and we would walk with them, with each person down a line
with a shopping
in
cart.
the shopping cart. And because we bagged all this food, and then there's other people putting bags of food in the carts, and you talk with them and walk with them, and you take them to their car and load their groceries. And then you ask them, is there anything we can pray with you about today? And that's where it all happens.
Yeah.
And now during COVID, we still try to do that. We have, they drive their cars through and they have to open up their trunks, but we have different, churches and stuff to help us, and so many volunteers that will have prayer teams that goes through the lines while they're waiting and pray with each car, because that's really what it's all about. It's all about the prayer for us.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I've had the good fortune of being a part of several of your food distributions, and I know for you there have been hundreds, and even my daughter has recently gotten to be a part of one, and it's awesome stuff. I think I remember the first one because you'd been telling me about it when we were in St. Louis still, and you guys were in Franklin, and eventually was able to get down to be a part of one, and that the impact on the volunteer, I think, is even as great, if not greater, than the recipient of the food.
So
and once you engage and you decide to really engage, I'll say, talking about myself here, and walking to the parking lot with somebody, pushing their groceries for them. I mean, even that little act, because I don't think the people there are used to getting served, and they're maybe used to serving. And so the opportunity to serve and handle their groceries for them and put them in their car and just say, what can I pray for you? Is there anything I can pray? And in the times that I was apart, no one ever said, no, there's nothing you can pray for me. So I would imagine that doesn't happen very often.
Not very often.
It's 99% of the people. And
maybe 3 has happened in 10 years for me. That was about it.
Most people say yes there, because there's always something going on, right, in life, man, where you need something.
Yeah.
Well, there's no reason people should be hungry in our world. There's so much food.
Yep.
And I love what One Gen is doing, and I love how it's bringing your communities together. You mentioned, ending denominationalism. And one of the things that I know Alliance for Shared Health gets pushed back on is a part of its statement of belief says that we're not denominationally based. And so, state regulators push back and act like that's a bad thing, and somehow that reduces the likelihood of the faith element to what Ash does. I said, no, this is about the churches coming together. This is about people coming together and realizing there is a bigger aspect to all of this than just, am I in the right denomination? No, we are the capital C church. Help each other.
That's right.
And so that's certainly what I think is one of the things that I love about what One Gen does. And it doesn't matter where you go to church. It doesn't matter what your socioeconomic background is, what your race is, what your religion is. Let's just meet needs, right?
Yeah. And what's so great, Corey, I think is, so many times people are like, what's your name? Where do you live? How much do you make? We don't ask any questions. If people are in that line, they're going to get food. And that's what I love about it, because people, you don't have to prove anything. You just are there and you're hungry and you're going to get food. So that's I think it's huge for people too, to know that they can get food without having any regulations or any questions asked.
Yeah. When I think of Jesus, one of our board members, when I think of Jesus, it's like he never asked people to prove anything or do anything. You know what I mean? He just totally, it was, one of our board members said it this way. She goes, it's like we ask people to prove they're sufficiently deficient to need help. And I thought that is just the antithesis of the gospel. You know what I mean? So it's like you humiliate people so that they can get help. And it's like, man, that's what part of the problem is, right? We've taken people, we've stripped them of their identity. And it's like, it's hard to have dignity when you don't have identity. Well, it's not hard. It's impossible.
Yeah.
You can't have dignity without identity. And like you said, I love what you said about us serving them. I believe that's, so we have some of our recipients, our friends that receive is what we say. we have some of our friends that receive that will ask us, can I volunteer? And I always say yes, because I believe that's the first step out of the cycle, is to be valuable to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I can be used to help someone else. Even though I'm receiving help, I can still help someone else. And I think that changes your perspective of who you are, that I have something to offer to someone else that has a need. And I think that changes how you see yourself. And it sets things in motion, sets you up for success, and sets some things into motion, you know. And I love that. And that's one of the things I love about Ash. What you said is, I always talk about, you know, you and I or people listening to this go to a church, but we're all part of the church. And like you said, the big C. And it's, you know, they'll know us by our love one for another. So it's like, if we can't figure out how to get along as the church, how can we how do we expect everybody else to get along? You know what I mean? So it's I think it's a beautiful thing. And it's one of the things that makes me proud to serve on the board of ASH is that we're getting to reach people across. We have the ability of helping people across all kinds of denominations and things like that. We're just able to help people that have a need. And we all know that medical it can be such a drain, not just financially, but emotionally, physically on people. And
I think what was incredible for us, I mean, because, you know, we've been with Alliance for Shared Health for 3 or 4 years now. And I mean, I wish we would have had it way back then with Sarah, because it's like a fraction of we were paying, you know, even 4 years ago, you know, 7 years ago when Chris had cancer. I mean, you know, our deductibles were $8,000 a piece. And it was just very difficult, and it was so expensive. And then once we, you know, joined Alliance for Shared Health, and it was just incredible. I mean, the cost is just a fraction of the cost of what we were paying. So
and with ASH being able to share expenses, you know, I think it's just something. They're just so important. You know what I mean? And not only that, but how we're able to give, you know, to give some of that money out to help others in Ethiopia and things like that, and just the amazing impact we're having on a nation and in a group of people. And so I that's what excites me, is that we're all in this together, and we all have our part to play, and no part's less significant than the. I know we've always heard that said, but it is so true. That
and you wrote a book. You wrote a book called "The Dirty Church," right? And that book to me is a sort of a model of what Alliance for Shared Health is all about. So, because it is about, if I can paraphrase or give the real Cliff Note version of what I think the Dirty Church is about. It's about the church in motion, outside the four walls, serving, making a difference in people's physical needs, not just telling people you need to have a relationship in God. No, you know, how can I worry about a relationship with God when I can't even, you know, put food to my face and feed my family? And it's pretty hard to get past that. And so I love that aspect of the concept of the dirty church. And I think for Alliance for Shared Health members, it's that same mentality of, this is the church in motion. This is, let's all make a difference in people's lives. And I think one of the things, you correct me if this is not how you see it, but I think you hit on this before when we've talked, is you might have people come through that line, that food distribution line, who don't have any need of the food you're about to hand out. They might be gaming the system, so to speak. And now I'm not saying that happens on a regular basis, but that's not for you and I decide. Our job is to say, God, how do you want to use me? And have that attitude in that heart of a giver. And then everything else is that's not our job, is it? I mean, you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And I appreciate you bringing that up. And because this is just food, man. It's a commodity. We get lots of it. People give it to us all. I mean, we get so much food donated to it instead of being thrown away. And I agree with you on that. I mean, I'd say way less than 1%, but definitely less than 1% of the people are scamming us.
And you know what? I mean, even if they do, that's between them and God. That's not like we have to be obedient to what God's telling us to do. And that's to feed people or to serve people. And whatever they do with that, to me, that's between them and God.
Well, and I think to add what Elaine said, you know, Corey, and what you were saying, and to add on what Elaine said, is that we tend to judge people by appearance. And so you think somebody's doing really well. I mean, I got a crazy story, man.
That's what I was going to ask you to tell that story.
My board chair at the time was pushing a cart with this big guy. He's just like a big dude. And it's a Cadillac Escalade, the car. And my board chair's like, really? Really? So he asked the guy, hey, man, he said, but I didn't say anything. He goes, but inside I was like judging. And he goes, so I asked him, man, is there anything I can pray with you about? And the guy just started to break down and he goes, yeah, man, my boss bought me this car and he was murdered. And now I live in that car.
He was his bodyguard, yeah. And now he lives in the car.
Wow.
So, you never judge. Like we tell all of our volunteers, like, just people might drive better cars than you, but you know what? That might be their house. They might be living in that car. So,
right.
You just don't judge because you have no idea what their story is.
And for people listening, as you and I talk about this, and I believe there are situations where you maybe have to do deeper vetting. We're dealing with food. I'm not giving people cash or money to pay a utility or, whatever. I mean, so I understand in circumstances. I just don't want somebody out there to feel like if you're vetting someone, you're not being Christian. I'm not saying that at all. And I don't want anybody to feel that way. But I think, like you said, that's, why they got in that situation. If I can help them not to be in that situation, great. But it's not my job to judge why they got there or how to, that kind of thing. My job is if I've got the ability to do good, it's my responsibility to do good. You know what I mean? So that's my paraphrase in the Bible, so I've got the resources to do it. It's food. I'm going to give it to them. And like you said, most people aren't really trying, we hear the stories. I mean, I know, but of that one story you hear about somebody scamming the government for something, how many millions of people didn't?
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? So it's like, they're just people, man. And most people I've ran into in our food lines are just really genuine, sweet people that just have some really difficult circumstances.
Well, I got into an interesting, you get into these social media things where, I don't know if it was Instagram or Facebook or whatever, where somebody I didn't know had posted that they, really cared about human trafficking relief. And it was a big deal to them. And I said, Pat Bradley real well, of course. And he's our connection to Ethiopia and the Bible Army International Church. And I said, well, check this. And I just, gave a link to their site and said, well, you check out this organization. They're awesome. And I love what they do. And then somebody else I didn't know got on and said, quit giving your money to sending our money to the World Health Organization and to China. And you're just wasting our money. And I'm like, oh man. And so I'm like, you don't know Crisis Aid. You don't know Pat Bradley. And
exactly.
I mean, Chris, you were there with me a year ago, basically a year ago, almost right now, before COVID. And we know that money is going directly to impact those folks. And to end that story, it's just like, it's still not my job to, if I feel led to that's where I'm supposed to give, and that's where you feel like God's directing you. At the end of the day, it's not I shouldn't hold on to my money because I don't think God knows what he's doing when he tells me that's where you should give. But all that to say, kind of transitioning to Ash and Ethiopia and the idea of ending denominationalism and racism, and maybe just as we get close to closing here, talking about the impact of the trip and the visit to Ethiopia and how much it meant to you as a board member of ASH.
I mean, it was life changing. First of all, because I've known Pat for 20 something years, before I knew you, I knew Pat, and so
probably 30 years,
and been in Bible studies with him, and so I've never got the experience of being able to go over with him or to be with him when he was over there. And it's just funny, man, how, you and Pat met, and then how you bring me back to Pat, which is really cool, so I love that. And I just think that's just a funny way how God works things, but it was just so impactful. The efficiency, the care, the thoughtfulness of how they rescue these girls, how they feed the young children that are starving, literally starving. Hunger there is different than hunger is here, but hunger is hunger. And I mean, I was just so impressed with how well it's run, how organized it is, how caring it is, how fiduciarily responsible they are. Everything about it it was just life-changing experience for me. And, to be able to talk to another nonprofit leader like Pat, who's been such a great example for me over the years, it was just really rewarding, and I just can't explain and articulate how grateful people ought to be that they get to be a part of what's happening over there, and to meet the girls, man, that their lives have just been completely transformed, where they were just literally, they were a commodity. They are literally a commodity that's being stripped of everything that's human, and how they've been restored to beautiful young women that are vibrant, that are impactful, that are running their own businesses. They've graduated from school. I mean, their whole lives have been changed and turned around, and they get to experience the gospel of Jesus Christ, which I think is obviously something that we can't even do in our physical strength, right? But we get to Pat's at least got to lead them to that place where they can experience it for themselves. And I think, I don't know, it's hard to put into words. I hope I articulated it well enough, but it's just, man, what an impactful experience to see all of that.
Well, obviously you're on the board. I'm an advisory board member to ASH, and I am privy to some of the challenges that Mike Hinchis and their team face from state regulators when they try and say that, BAIC hasn't been sharing in healthcare needs since pre-1999. I'm like, oh my gosh, you have the answer is, why don't you go over there and see it's healthcare sharing in its purest form?
Yes.
And the pediatric hospital that ASH members help fund, and the beauty of it, it's $1 per household, so it's a very, very small portion, but it exponentially impacts over there because the dollar, the exchange rate's 33 to 1, and the impact is it is life-changing. And so the vast majority of dollars stay here to share in medical needs here. But that $1 just is so impactful, and it's so pure to what's happening. And obviously you and I got to see it firsthand.
Yeah. When you talk about stewardship, which really is what money's all about, right? I mean, anything we have, it's just stewarding it. It's God's. We're just fortunate enough to get to, steward it somewhere. But look at the leverage of $1 over in Ethiopia compared to what it is here. The level of impact over there. I mean, just all the things. I mean, like they have cows and their milk, and they're making yogurt, and they're opened a store. And I'm like, my gosh, man, entrepreneurs are being created. People are flowing in gifts they never even knew they had, all because that $1 was donated. How amazing is that? For the power of $1 and the power of impact is so exponentially larger over there. It's amazing, man. It's just incredible the difference people are making.
And they can't waste anything. They don't waste it. They find a way to put everything to use because access to resources isn't. There's a scarcity to it, and so you have to. It's just impressive how how much detail and much attention is paid to every aspect to make sure that there is at least, I don't know if abundance is the right word, but there's enough for all the work, and somehow God continues to supply. And Pat's so instrumental in that, and you all as part of the board, it's so great. We have several board members of ASH who run nonprofits, and so you can relate to how important it is to use the resources wisely and to treat the organization with a great amount of care, so that members and the ministry is working in a way that is beneficial and to all those who are connected to it.
Yes, definitely. 100% agree with that. And it's thank you for the vision, man. You dreamed of Shaw, Shared Health Alliance, which birthed ASH, and so I'm grateful for your heart and your vision for people, man. It's an honor and a privilege to be called your friend, and you've had such a great impact on our life and our ministry. And so we're forever grateful for that. Yeah. And we're forever grateful for that.
Well, it's kind of you to say those things. I can't take a lot of credit for that. I mean, you and I both know, that we do our best to feel like we're following God's leading. And as you both hinted at, it's nice sometimes to get confirmation. And some of that confirmation for me has just come in seeing the fruit that's been born out of your lives and out of the obedience that you guys walk in. And it is not always easy because there are a lot of obstacles sometimes, and there are a lot of objectors. And but we know, just like when we went over to Ethiopia and we see the impact, we know we're helping people here. And I don't want what Ash does to stop, because I know the people over there need what Ash members are doing as much as what is happening over here. So it kind of fuels you, you know, when you see the people that you walk to the car with and how much that week's worth of groceries means to them, or you see different racial groups coming together. And man, those things fuel you and remind you why you do what you do.
That's why we get up every day, man. It's I tell people I'm, you know, in a sweet spot of my life right now. I get to get up and do what I love to do every day, and I can't believe that I get to do this. I mean, it's like, what a dream, man. I mean, I'm beyond thankful, beyond grateful, humbled beyond belief. I've met so many incredible people. My gosh, man, their stories. People that I thought I was tough, or I thought I could endure, man. Oh my gosh, I'm soft compared to what some of these people have been through, you know. And but God, right? We press forward.
So true.
And I think, you know, I know we got to get to the end of this. I think that as, you know, if you're going to do something for God, there's going to be some resistance. It just is, man, you know, and that's okay. And I'd encourage anyone listening, don't quit just because there's resistance. That doesn't mean you're not doing the right thing.
You're doing exactly what you're supposed to do.
You are doing exactly what you're supposed to do. And if everything we did in life was easy, it wouldn't be that much fun anymore, would it? Right. I mean, I guess it would, but I wouldn't know. But I think having resistance is okay. It's just having that courage and tenacity not to back down and to keep pushing forward, because someone's life depends on it.
That's right.
And
lives are tied to your obedience.
Yep. Exactly.
Well, you both are a great illustration of that, and I'm sure grateful for the impact that you've had in my family's lives, and I'm grateful for the impact you're having as a board member for Alliance for Shared Health, and I love the time we get to spend together. I am fortunate because I am surrounded by and get to work with some of my best friends in the world, most meaningful relationships in the world, and you know. There are people that would tell you don't do that. And I don't know why, but I just feel fortunate that for some reason it works in our world. And we hear each other. We listen to each other. Nobody tells each other what to do. That's all made clear. And we also understand that ultimately it's about helping people. And that at the end of the day is what this is all about. So love the time with you both.
You too, Corey.
You too, man.
Appreciate your friendship immensely.
Appreciate you and Summer.
Friend. Thanks for this opportunity, man.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it. And you guys have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, have a great weekend. We'll look forward to talking again soon.
You too, brother.
Love you guys. Talk to you later.
You too.
See you, buddy.
Bye.
Well, the story of Chris and Elaine's, everything that happened with Chris and Elaine's daughter, with Sarah, and that whole event is just amazing. I wish that we could just do a series on it. I think many people would be so encouraged. We really just scratched the surface there. And the Whitneys are people that I'm just constantly impressed by and encouraged by their faithful witness. And, they just step out and they want to help people. And what they're doing with One Gen Away is just so amazing. And it's just continues to spread and grow fingers and kind of spread out across the country. And so I love getting to share their story. And I hope a lot of people are encouraged by the things that they're doing. They are truly great friends of mine. And I love that Chris is a huge part of Alliance for Shared Health. And I know that he is around and part of ASH because he believes in what ASH is doing. And so he's a great proponent of it. His wife, Elaine, is as well. And so their story is fantastic. Check out One Gen Away online and learn more there. And again, just appreciate you joining. We're going to look forward to doing this again real soon and look forward to spending more time again with you on the next episode of Running Eyes.